Guy de Maupassant, The Necklace. She was one of those pretty and charming girls who are sometimes, as if by mistake of destiny, born in a family of clerks. She had no dowry, no expectations, no means of being known, understood, loved, wedded by any rich and distinguished man, and she let herself be married to a little clerk at the Ministry of Public Instruction. She dressed plainly because she could not dress well, but she was as unhappy as though she had really fallen from her proper station, since with women there is neither caste nor rank, and beauty, grace, and charm act instead of family and birth. Natural fineness, instinct for what is elegant, suppleness of wit, are the sole hierarchy, and make from women of the people the equals of the very greatest ladies. She suffered ceaselessly, feeling herself born for all the delicacies and all the luxuries. She suffered from the poverty of her dwelling, from the wretched look of the walls, from the worn-out chairs, from the ugliness of the curtains. All those things of which another woman of her rank would never even have been conscious tortured her and made her angry. The sight of the little Breton peasant who did her humble housework aroused in her regrets, which were despairing and distracted dreams. She thought of the silent antechambers, hung with oriental tapestry, lit by tall bronze candelabra, land of the two great footmen in knee breeches who sleep in the big armchairs, made drowsy by the heavy warmth of the hot air stove. She thought of the long salons, fitted with ancient silk, of delicate furniture carrying priceless curiosities, and of the coquettish, perfumed boudoirs made for talks at 5 o'clock with intimate friends, with men, famous and sought after, whom all women envy and whose attention they all desire. When she sat down to dinner, before the round table covered with a tablecloth 3 days old, opposite her husband, who uncovered the soup tureen and declared with an enchanted air, "Ah, the good pot au feu. I don't know anything better than that." She thought of dainty dinners, of shining silverware, of tapestry which peopled the walls with ancient personages, and with strange birds flying in the midst of a fairy forest. And she thought of delicious dishes served on marvelous plates, and of the whispered gallantries which you listen to with a sphinx-like smile while you're eating the pink flesh of a trout or the wings of a quail. She had no dresses, no jewels, nothing, and she loved nothing but that. She would so have liked to please, to be envied, to be charming, to be sought after. She had a friend, a former schoolmate at the convent, who was rich and whom she did not like to go and see any more. She suffered so much when she came back. But one evening her husband returned home with a triumphant air and holding a large envelope in his hand. "There," said he, "is something for you." She tore the paper sharply and drew out a printed card, which bore these words: "The Minister of Public Instruction and mine, Georges Rumpanel, requested the honor of M. and mine, Louise's company at the Palace of the Ministry of on Monday evening, January 18th. Instead of being delighted, as her husband hoped, she threw the invitation on the table with disdain, murmuring, "What do you want me to do with that?" "But, my dear, I thought you would be glad. You never go out, and this is such a fine opportunity. I had awful trouble to get it. Everyone wants to go. It is very select, and they are not giving many invitations to clerks. The whole official world will be there." She looked at him with an irritated eye and said impatiently, "And what do you want me to put on my back?" He had not thought of that, he stammered. "Why, the dress you go to the theater in. It looks very well to me." He stopped, distracted, seeing that his wife was crying. 2 great tears descended slowly from the corner of her eyes toward the corners of her mouth. He stuttered, "What's the matter? What's the matter?" But by a violent effort she had conquered her grief, and she replied with a calm voice while she wiped her wet cheeks, "Nothing, only I have no dress, and therefore I cannot go to this ball. Give your card to some colleague whose wife is better equipped than I." He was in despair. He resumed, Come, let us see Mathilde. How much would it cost? A suitable dress, which you could use on other occasions. Something very simple. She reflected several seconds, making her calculations and wondering also what sum she could ask without drawing on herself an immediate refusal and a frightened exclamation from the economical clerk. Finally, she replied, hesitatingly, I don't know exactly, but I think I could manage it with 400 francs. He had grown a little pale because he was laying aside just that amount to buy a gun and treat himself to a little shooting next summer on the plain of Nanterre, with several friends who went to shoot larks down there of a Sunday. But he said, all right, I will give you 400 francs, and try to have a pretty dress. The day of the ball drew near, and mine, Louisel, seemed sad, uneasy, anxious. Her dress was ready, however. Her husband said to her one evening, what's the matter? Come, you've been so queer these last 3 days. And she answered, it annoys me not to have a single jewel, not a single stone, nothing to put on. I shall look like distress. I should almost rather not go at all, he resumed. You might wear natural flowers. It's very stylish at this time of the year. For 10 francs, you can get 2 or 3 magnificent roses. She was not convinced. No, there's nothing more humiliating than to look poor among other women who are rich. But her husband cried, how stupid you are. Go and see your friend Madame Forestier and ask her to lend you some jewels. You know her well enough for that. She uttered a cry of joy. Of course, I had not thought of that. The next day she went to her friend's house and told her of her distress. Madame Forestier went to her mirrored wardrobe, took out a large box, brought it back, opened it, and said to Madame Louisel, choose, my dear. First, she saw some bracelets, then a pearl necklace, Venetian cross set with precious stones of exquisite craftsmanship. She tried on the jewelry in the mirror, hesitated, could not bear to part with them, to give them back. She kept asking, you have nothing else? Why, yes, but I don't know what you like. Suddenly she discovered in a black satin box a superb diamond necklace, and her heart began to beat with uncontrolled desire. Her hands trembled as she took it. She fastened it around her neck, over her high neck dress, and she stood lost in ecstasy as she looked at herself. Then she asked anxiously, hesitating, would you lend me this? Just this? Why, yes, of course. She threw her arms around her friend's neck, embraced her rapturously, then fled with her treasure. The day of the party arrived. Madame Louisel was a success. She was prettier than all the other women, elegant, gracious, smiling, and full of joy. All the men stared at her, asked her name, tried to be introduced. All the cabinet officials wanted to waltz with her. The minister noticed her. She danced wildly, with passion, drunk on pleasure, forgetting everything in the triumph of her beauty and the glory of her success, in a sort of cloud of happiness made up of all this respect, all this admiration, all the awakened desires, of the sense of triumph that is so sweet to a woman's heart. She left at about 4 o'clock in the morning. Her husband had been dozing since midnight in a little deserted anteroom with 3 other gentlemen whose wives were having a good time. He threw over her shoulders the clothes he had brought for her to go outside in, the modest clothes of an ordinary life, whose poverty contrasted sharply with the elegance of the ball dress. She felt this and wanted to run away, so she wouldn't be noticed by other women who were wrapping themselves in expensive furs. Louisa held her back. Wait a moment, you'll catch a cold outside. I'll go and find a cab. But she would not listen to him and ran down the stairs. When they were finally in the street, they could not find a cab, and they began to look for one, shouting at the cabman they saw passing in the distance. They walked down toward the sign in despair, shivering with cold. At last they found on the quay one of those old night cabs that one sees in Paris only after dark, as if they were ashamed to show their shabbiness during the day. They were dropped off at their door in the Rue des Martyrs, and sadly walked up the steps to their apartment. It was all over for her, and he was remembering that he had to be back at the office at 10 o'clock. In front of the mirror, she took off the clothes round her shoulders, taking a final look at herself in all her glory. But suddenly she uttered a cry. She no longer had the necklace around her neck. "What's the matter?" asked her husband, already half undressed. She turned towards him, panic-stricken. I no longer have Madame Forestier's necklace." He stood up, distraught. "What? How? That's impossible." They looked in the folds of her dress, in the folds of her cloak, in her pockets, everywhere, but they could not find it. "Are you sure you still had it on when you left the ball?" he asked. "Yes, I touched it in the hall at the ministry." "But if you had lost it in the street, we would have heard it fall." "It must be in the cab." "Yes, that's probably it. Did you take his number?" "No." "And you? Didn't you notice it?" "No." They stared at each other, stunned. At last Louisel put his clothes on again. "I'm going back," he said. "Over the whole route we walked. See if I can find it." He left. She remained in her ball dress all evening, without the strength to go to bed, sitting on a chair, with no fire, her mind blank. Her husband returned at about 7 o'clock. He had found nothing. He went to the police, to the newspapers, to offer a reward, to the cab companies. Everywhere the tiniest glimmer of hope had led him. She waited all day, in the same state of blank despair, from before this frightful disaster. Louisel returned in the evening, a hollow, pale figure. He had found nothing. "You must write to your friend," he said. "Tell her you have broken the clasp of her necklace, and that you are having it mended. It will give us time to look some more." She wrote as he dictated. At the end of 1 week, they had lost all hope, and Louisel, who had aged 5 years, declared, "We must consider how to replace the jewel." The next day they took the box which had held it and went to the jeweler whose name they found inside. He consulted his books. "It was not I, madame, who sold the necklace. I must simply have supplied the case." And so they went from jeweler to jeweler, looking for a necklace like the other one, consulting their memories, both sick with grief and anguish. In a shop at Palais Royal, they found a string of diamonds which seemed to be exactly what they were looking for. It was worth 40,000 francs. They could have it for 36,000. So they begged the jeweler not to sell it for 3 days, and they made an arrangement that he would take it back for 34,000 francs if the other necklace was found before the end of February. Louisel had 18,000 francs, which his father had left him. He would borrow the rest, and he did borrow, asking for 1,000 francs from one man, 500 from another, 5 louis there, 3 louis there. He gave notes, made ruinous agreements, dealt with usurers, with every type of moneylender. He compromised the rest of his life, risked signing notes without knowing if he could ever honor them, and terrified by the anguish still to come, by the black misery about to fall on him, by the prospect of every physical privation and every mortal torture he was about to suffer, he went to get the new necklace and laid down on the jeweler's counter 36,000 francs. When Madame Louisel took the necklace back, Madame Forestier said coldly, "You should have returned it sooner. I might have needed it." To the relief of her friend, she did not open the case. If she had detected this substitution, what would she have thought? What would she have said? Would she have taken her friend for a thief? From then on, Madame Louisel knew the horrible life of the very poor, but she played the part heroically. The dreadful debt must have been paid. She would pay it. They dismissed their maid. They changed their lodgings. They rented a garret under the roof. She came to know the drudgery of housework, the odious labors of the kitchen. She washed the dishes, staining her rosy nails on greasy pots and the bottoms of pans. She washed the dirty linen, the shirts and the dishcloths, which she hung to dry on a line. She carried the garbage down the street every morning, and carried up the water, stopping at each landing to catch her breath. And dressed like a commoner, she went to the fruiterers, the grocers, the butchers, her basket on her arm, bargaining, insulted, fighting over every miserable soul. Each month they had to pay some notes, renew others, get more time. Her husband worked every evening, doing accounts for a tradesman, and often late into the night he sat copying a manuscript at 5 sous a page. And this life lasted for 10 years. At the end of 10 years, they had paid off everything at usurers' rates, and with the accumulations of a compound interest. Madame Louisel looked old now. She had become strong, hard, and rough like all women of impoverished households. with hair half-combed, with skirts awry, with reddened hands. She talked loudly as she washed the floor with great swishes of water. But sometimes, when her husband was at the office, she sat down near the window and thought of that evening at the ball long ago when she had been so beautiful and so admired. What would have happened if she had not lost the necklace? Who knows? Who knows? How strange life is, how fickle, how little is needed for one to be ruined or saved. One Sunday, as she was walking in the Champs-Élysées to refresh herself after the week's work, suddenly she saw a woman walking with a child. It was Madame Forestier, still young, still beautiful, still charming. Madame Louise felt emotional. Should she speak to her? Yes, of course. And now that she had paid, she would tell her all. Why not? She went up to her. Good morning, Jan. The other, astonished to be addressed so familiarly by this common woman, did not recognize her. She stammered, But, madame, I don't know. You must have made a mistake. No, I'm Mathilde Louisel. Her friend uttered a cry. Oh, my poor Mathilde, how you've changed. Yes, I've had some hard times since I last saw you, and many miseries, and all because of you. Me? How could that be? You remember that diamond necklace you lent me to wear in the ministry party? Yes, well, I lost it. What do you mean? You brought it back? I brought you back another exactly like it, and it has taken us 10 years to pay for it. It wasn't easy for us. We had very little, but at last it is over, and I'm very glad. Madame Forestier was stunned. You say that you brought a diamond necklace to replace mine? Yes, you didn't notice then? They were very similar. And she smiled with proud and innocent pleasure. Madame Forestier, deeply moved, took both her hands. Oh, my poor Mathilde, mine was an imitation. It was worth 500 francs at most.